All right, welcome. So for parents, families, for the fall advising and orientation sessions, I'm glad you're here with us today. We are going to talk about transitions for partnering for student success in university residences, so in on-campus housing. So we're going to start with some introductions. My name is Vicki Van Werf. I'm the Associate Director of Residence Life here in University Residences. Use she, her pronouns. Been at Western for about 2 years.
Hi everyone, my name is Richard Henderson, pronouns are he, him, his. I'm an Assistant Director for Residence Life. I oversee the Ridge area, our student staff training and our curriculum. This will be my 5th fall at Western coming up, so excited to be back at work.
All right, so just so you know what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to go over student development theory. Richard and I know this well, but for parents and families, there's a lot of research done about how college students are successful and tools they need for academic success and personal growth. So we're going to go through some of those elements today. We're going to talk about transitioning to college. That can be tough, especially as a new student to Western. So we'll talk about some success strategies and ways to do that. We'll also talk about URISE. URISE stands for University Residences Initiative on Student Engagement. So basically it's a way that we in Residence Life help students build skills and knowledge for their career here at Western. We'll go over dining. We often get a lot of questions about the dining halls, healthy eating options, and then we'll talk about move-in and what September and fall welcome might look like for your student. All right, so jumping into our presentation, there's a lot of change ahead. Like we talked about just initially, transitioning to college can be tough. It's an exciting time. It's a stressful time for parents and families as well, especially if this is your first child or first student that you're sending off to college. Can be a big transition for parents as well as students and supporting your student in their first year of college. So we're going to talk a lot today about how to engage in your own tool belt and skills that you can have and build in yourself to help with this transition.
Thanks, Vicki. So student development theory, we're not going to get into the weeds of it, as this is not an academic webinar, but at the same time it's important to know that we do have a focus on that. And so we've defined it here as that it's the development that a student grows, progresses, or increases their development or capabilities as a result of being enrolled in higher education. So I know for me, being an international student initially from Scotland coming into school, I came in with a lot of preconceived notions, how I was brought up in my environment, my thoughts, and we want to honor that and build on that and not kind of look to edit, change, or assimilate, really try and acknowledge the skills that people are bringing in. But we also know that there's a lot of progression that happens, and hopefully so, right? That's why they're coming. So knowing that we see that in student involvement, in conversations we have with them, roommate conflicts, so how a student grows with us through their time here, whether that's 1 year, 2 year, and we've got a lot of behavioral indicators that we look for we can see students moving from questioning, groupthink, to individualistic approaches and how they start thinking. And this is really translated for us outside of the classroom as well into residence life. So we really believe that the learning happens simultaneously as well as the classroom learning. Go ahead, Vicki.
All right, sorry about that. Go ahead.
So we use this this picture a lot. So you've hopefully maybe been on one of these, or you at least know what it is. But what the concept we look for is that it's a learning partnership. So there's not one person on the bike, right, driving it for their future. So we really want to know that we've got someone helping them along the way. We know that for the majority of our students, they've had a lot of assistance with high school and guidance counselors and teachers and coaches all the way through to get here. So great job. You did a fantastic job of getting our students here. Now, if we're to ask you where your student was sitting on this bike, there may be different answers. Some of you may think they're in the front. Some of you may think they're in the back. But a lot of what we see is they're ultimately on the back. They've gotten a lot of the way they've kind of been, the way they've lived, the school they've went to, the jobs they've had to take, the classes they've taken. They've probably had input into that, but ultimately they've been following kind of where their environment's leading them and where the leadership's taking them to. So when they come to college, the difference will be we'll be pushing them to the front of that bike, and we want them to make ownership of their decisions and hopefully good choices. But our promise to you is that, we're not just going to leave them so they're driving single or solo. We'll be there helping them along the way, and it's the proverbial we, right? It's us, academic advisors, counselors, teachers, TAs, research, library, dining, but we want to make sure they've got support. And so just know that we do see it as a partnership, and it's not that we just let the students come and kind of leave them in their rooms. We have strategies, educational strategies that make sure that we're sequentially building along the learning and making sure that's happening outside of the classroom as well as inside. So one of the key foundational theories that's very easy to understand, but is very powerful, is this kind of L shape of challenge and support, right? So it was Nevitt Sanford that founded it and talks about that significant growth and development happens here. And so if you think about it, I have a daughter who's almost 2, and for example, if this happens every morning when we try to give her a yogurt to eat it, she wants to take the spoon and do it herself, right? She's 18 months going on 18, but at the same time, by doing that, you all know what's going to happen. The yogurt goes all over the couch and all over the floor and everywhere else. So by just giving her the spoon and saying, hey, here you go, that's too much challenge, right? But ultimately, me doing it every time is too much support. And so that you can look at that in a lot of ways of how that happens and translates to the college experience as well. So, for example, I've had parents call me and say, "Hey, Mr. Henderson, can you go knock on my son or daughter's door to wake them up?" Maybe a little bit too much support, right? For the classes, they may have to miss a class to understand what's going on. But at the same time, nobody checks in on the student. We leave them to their own devices. Maybe that's too much challenge initially. So we try and work with that balance, and we're constantly trying to push them to make good choices and take ownership of those choices, as well as being sufficiently challenged. So it's just an easy way of getting your head around student development theory and what we're ultimately trying to do. So we're looking at some key transition issues. And they are common. The good thing is a lot of these, Vicky and I have been working in residence life and student affairs for a long time. And, the first year of college is typically all about change and self-discovery. So the first few weeks is often a mix of excitement and overwhelming. And these transitions the student has, they won't be exactly the same for everybody, but they likely will happen. And that's why we have a lot of research around the first year and the sophomore slump and how people progress. So we're going to take you through a couple of these just so you know maybe what to be aware of. And if we were in a live setting, we would ask you, and hopefully you would know about some of these. So Western's going to be in the quarter system. And so with fall, for us, there's probably a couple of key ones that you can already think of. Right, there's excitement, there's newfound freedom, but that may come with a sense of homesickness and loneliness. All right, so there may be frequent calls home, there may be no calls home, and so you may be wondering, we used to speak every day, now we don't. For me, as being an international student, when I came, I didn't really check in a whole lot at first, and I was just busy, getting to know people and doing things, and then I kind of forgot really, but it really hit me later on around the Thanksgiving time, and so you'll see that after the first 4 or 5 weeks that maybe past relationships from high school or hometown, love relationships, friendships, that may start to decrease or they may start to break up. And then there'll also be this maybe sense of impostership of, did I make the right decision? Do I belong here? The quarter system is very quick. And so in terms of midterms, when they come up, that may be the first indicator of, oh boy, here I need to start studying. I need to kind of get my act together here. So the workload will increase. And then that Thanksgiving time is really crucial because professors do like to give some homework in midterms, and then it's Thanksgiving break, and then you're straight into finals. So there may be that anxiety, that excitement, but it may also be, I'm really worried about how I did in this. I didn't study as much as I could have. So these are just some common things that a lot of our students will go through, and so just be cognizant of that as learners and partners and support people in their journey. Now, if we transition to winter, there's again, similar things happen traditionally for everybody, but again, won't exactly happen in this model. But there may be some satisfaction or some disgruntlement about fall grades. So one thing that we do in residence life and also partner with academic advising and SOS, we reach out to every student who gets put on academic warning who lives with us. So we meet with them, they meet with a professional full-time staff member, and we say, hey, let's make a plan. What happened? What can we do? And sometimes that's related to roommate conflict or location to the library or dining hall. So we'll really work with them to make a plan on that. Winter in Bellingham, there is a lack of sunlight. So sometimes you may wake up and go to bed and it's dark. So just being cognizant of that for our students from maybe California or other places. There may be anxiety that continues. We do see maybe concerns over change in diet, right, and weight gain, and maybe our high school athletes are not really working out as much. They may start to see changes, and so there may be again that who am I, what's happening? I've been away for 3 months and trying to figure out who they are. So just know that may happen also in winter, and if you start seeing those things, it's not really a cause for an alarm, but it's more of a cause of self-discovery. But it's always good to check in and make sure they're staying on track and they're feeling supported. And if we go into spring, then you'll see, again, finals be coming in. There's a lot of apprehension possibly about returning home. If you're like my parents, you've turned my room into this, into the spare room or the gym or whatever it is, or the office. And so they're worried about that. Or maybe they've been away for 10 months and the likelihood is, I've made new friends and I want to stay here. And so they start apartment hunting in Bellingham and looking for a place to stay. So they may start turning their attention to major exploration, internship, jobs. But one thing about being in the quarter system is our students, by the time they're released, they're in competition with internships and jobs with the rest of the state as well. So thinking early about those financially could be a hit as well for that first year of, okay, do I need a job? Or I didn't take a job so I can study, but now I've got a firm grasp on how many credits, or I took 12 to 13 credits, now I want to take 15. And we really try and push students to take 15 to finish to get them there. And so there's a lot of questions around that and a lot of soul searching about the next year and whether they're going to live on campus or not. So just know that spring can be a time of reflection, but a big piece of questioning as well about what's going to happen next. And it's always best to plan early and support and have a plan as best you can. And so just kind of to sum up those pieces of it, the common ones again are that learning that happens through the choices and consequences. So we do want to create a learning environment. Now, ultimately, our students will tell you that they want to have the best college experience in the time of their life, which we want them to have. But our number one focus is not on necessarily satisfaction. It's on learning and how do we do that. So we want to make sure that if you're going to class, turning everything in, following our community standards, they all have consequences and there's all ownership to choices, and we try and help them with that. And the adjustment to college life will be different for everybody. The college level classes, regardless if you've taken running start or AP courses, there's just an adjustment in workload. And probably the biggest one, setting limits and managing freedom. So if we're looking at that academically, we know one of the two biggest challenges our first year students face is how to study when nothing's due, and how to kind of prioritize their workload. So those two things are really big that we'll see them happening in that first year. And so it's always great if you can send them to us or be support people for them when those transition issues happen.
Yeah, so speaking of being support systems, when those transitions happen, we know that as parents, family members, friends, that you are a major support system for the student that you're sending to college. And we also know that things will start to hit students at different times. So you may get a call right at the beginning after you drop your student offer after move-in, after they move all their things in, that they don't know anybody, they're not sure how to get connected. They might even call and say, I hate it here, I want out. And it's really important to keep that in perspective when your student is calling you at those challenging times. We're going to talk about a little bit of strategies about how to navigate that, but it's important to think about why they're calling. Usually it's because you are such a strong support system. Sometimes they just might need you to listen, even though you're probably used to fixing things for them, especially in their younger years. And this might be a time to really push them to more independence. I remember calling my parents when I first got to college, and I was definitely one of those students that wanted to get connected, but also didn't feel comfortable at first and was really challenged those first few weeks in terms of making friends and getting along with my roommate. And my parents really pushed me to kind of figure that out on my own. And at first, it didn't feel very supportive, but later in life, really reflecting back on that and knowing they were doing that so I can learn and learn how to navigate and solve problems on my own versus relying on them, which was beneficial in the long term. So some strategies that you can use as you think about when you get that phone call or that visit back from home with your student really stressed out or wanting your help. One important thing is realizing there's no magic technique that will calm your student down or may calm your student down. Sometimes, again, they just want you to listen. Sometimes they may want you to solve it for them. We encourage you not to do that. We'll talk to you about it here in a second. But it may be that you have to use a different strategy from when they were younger, and really think about why they're calling or why they're upset, and keep that perspective again. One thing that we know is that they're probably not sharing the whole story. We work with roommate conflicts a lot, and almost every case, your student may have a conflict going on or disagreement with their roommate, and the roommate has a whole nother story of their own that has a completely different perspective or side of it. And it's our job to help students really navigate that and figure out what that means and how to solve that issue and work through that conflict. But know that the whole story may not be there, just that one perspective. You want to keep in mind, again, that you're maybe only seeing part of the picture, and there's a ton of resources on campus and staff members here to support your student, and we really encourage you to utilize those and your student to utilize those, and we'll talk about that again here in a second as well. And really recognize when your student needs additional support. So there's definitely times when it is time for you to intervene or give us a call and let us know when your student needs something. I think specifically about health and safety concerns or mental health concerns. Like I said, there's a ton of resources on campus that our staff have access to. And sometimes it's overwhelming for students to hear about, especially when they first come to campus, to know who the right office is to talk to, which resource to access. So we encourage you and your student to really reach out to professional staff who live and work in the building, and we'll talk about who some of those people are and the resources available to students on campus. So this is a huge piece for us that we always talk about with parents, especially family members. It's really time when your student goes to college to really reflect on what Richard talked about with that bike example, and really moving them to the front of that bike, and really having your student be an advocate for themselves and really solve problems on their own. So we encourage you to, when your student does call with a problem or come home with a problem, is really think about what's available to them. Do they need tutoring services? Do they need to visit the counseling center? Do they need a disability accommodation? Do they need help with financial aid in terms of paying for college? They're paying for, and you're paying for, a lot of resources and staff who are here to help your student. And I can tell you, all of the staff at Western are really here to do that. That's our job and our purpose in terms of helping your student be successful here, helping them graduate, helping them navigate through the challenges of coming to college, and celebrating their successes as well. So really encourage you to utilize those resources. And then ask questions and really refer them to others that they can connect with on campus, as opposed to telling them what they should do or giving advice. Sometimes that advice is needed as well, but there's a good balance of that. And then lastly, we talked about this a second ago, but we want to be a resource for you as well. So if you're not sure how to help your student, sometimes we'll get calls from parents that say, I don't want my son or daughter to know that I'm calling you, but I just want to know, who do I connect them with on campus? We welcome those phone calls and those emails to make sure that your student is going the right direction and really taking advantage of those resources that they need. So who do you call to do that? There's a few different resources. So for on-campus students, anybody who lives in a residence hall or apartment community on campus, we have resident directors who are professional staff members. They're master's level. Most of them have their master's degree in student development theory that we've been talking about today, or higher education administration. So they went to school to do this work. And they live and work in the building. So they have an apartment in the building. So students can access them, ask questions, get to know them as people. They also have offices in the building. Usually they're on their first floor. They're usually in the main entrance, somewhere accessible and visible to the residence hall community. So we encourage students to get to know those folks. Our staff members are really out there, especially during move-in, the first few months of the quarter. Getting to know students are a great resource. They can connect students with other staff members on campus or academic resources to help them be successful. And you are able to call those folks as well. They're listed on our housing website. So depending on which community your student is in, you can call the resident director who's assigned to that community and ask questions and get referrals from there. The Office of Student Life is another good resource. So if your student is struggling, you're concerned about them, have questions related to either academics or just student life in general, the Office of Student Life is another good resource. Can also connect to faculty and staff across campus and just ask general questions about campus life.
So I mentioned a little bit earlier about the learning that we want to happen outside of the classroom and inside. Sorry if I'm echoing. And so one of the main things you want to do is, if you think back to when you were in college, or if you've watched any movies about university or college like I did when, I was an international student, it's not like that. And a lot of misconceptions. And for us, we really do value that. Vicky talked about our master's level professionals that live in. We have a real clear focus on a learning curriculum that we want to happen, as well as providing a very comfortable and safe home environment for our students. So our University Residence Initiative for student engagement, we call it URISE, it's really built around 3 learning goals. And we didn't pull those out just kind of randomly. We did a lot of digging and a lot of assessment, a lot of student satisfaction, student surveys, student learning based on that. So the 3 that we have, these are 3 areas that will be intertwined and wound in everything that we do in our residence life strategies, in our programming, and our conversations. So inclusive community building, hopefully is a no-brainer, particularly if you think about what's happening in our nation right now and around the world. We really want to look at social connections, relationships, how to engage with someone who has a different value or belief than you do. How do we make community feel a place that everyone's valued, they celebrate our own identities, and make sure that we can thrive and be our full selves in those places. And hopefully those skills will then take to where they live off campus and in their communities, and can be real change agents there as well. Career preparedness, it sounds like a no-brainer, but for us, even in that first year or regardless, we want to have a clear focus on what's going to happen, how are we preparing you. And even if you don't know what your major is yet, we still know that there's skills. A lot of the skills that our employers are telling us they want are interpersonal conflict, right, and punctuality, kind of technical literacy. Most of it's around conflict in difficult conversations and how to talk and work through generational differences. And so we want to really provide a platform on how to do that, and as well as personal wellness. Stress and anxiety are the 2 leading causes of why students will not retain at the university. So we want to make sure we're giving them strategies how to manage that, and not necessarily eliminate stress or anxiety, because that's not necessarily a good thing either, but how to manage that, how to cope, how to, again, function by yourself in a community with deadlines, with competing projects, and because that's going to happen. So we have a really big focus. It doesn't mean that other things are not important, but that's what we'll develop our time to, and that's what we hope all of our students will get when they live with us. So I'm not going to go into this deeply, but if you think back, I talked about student development theory, and we talked about the challenge and support. So the theoretical framework that drives our model is Dr. Tara Yosso's cultural wealth model. And to kind of simply put, we worked with Tara Yosso in a consultation for over a year, and it's really about our students who come with us, they're not empty vessels that we're going to pour in a bunch of information and they kind of robotically walk off. We know that they come with an array of skills, knowledges, and abilities from different family values, religious beliefs, organizations. Like, they come in with so much skill and knowledge, particularly this upcoming generation is the most informed generation. So we want to build on that and really see them through a strength and not a deficit lens. So regardless of GPA indicator or socioeconomic status, we want to make sure that we're building on those strengths and just helping them see that they do have the skills to succeed, regardless of how they've been perceived by themselves or others. So we'll focus on their goals and dreams, maintaining their aspirational capital, talk about their family support or their other support systems. Who do they define as family and strong support? We'll also talk about the advocacy of themselves through social and navigational needs, and also looking at ways to maintain the resilience and push back against things that are unfair, and when they can advocate for themselves to have a better living environment or a different class schedule. So we want to help them be the voice for themselves as opposed to speaking for them, and we want to do that as early as possible, and again, be that partner on the journey with them.
All right, so we are going to switch topics a little bit here and talk about university dining. So we have a lot of dining centers that are here and ready to serve your students' needs. It's a big part of our housing and dining program. So our dining's commitment is really helping your student to have a healthy life, whatever that means to them, having a variety of food choices and options that are going to meet their lifestyle. So there's 3 main dining halls on campus. There's one in each region, north, south, and then our Ridge area. So those 3 dining halls are your traditional, like the picture here, where you sit down and eat. There's also many retail locations and to-go options across campus. So a lot of variety and ability to choose different options. These are 2 of our amazing staff members who work in dining, and they're really available for specific questions. So if your student has allergies, specific dietary needs, they want to eat a healthy lifestyle, they're not sure how to do that, need nutrition advice, these 2 folks are great people to reach out to. So if you have specific needs or your student has specific needs, Chef Irby is on there and it has his email. You can also just email dining@wwu.edu and ask any specific questions you have. They're available over the summer for consultation as well. So great people to reach out to. And then this is just a map of our different locations across campus. So my favorite to-go option, there's Freshens listed on here, number 12, over by Carver Gym, have great salads, great flatbreads, to-go options. So if a student is going to class and needs something quick, this is a good option. There's Zoe's that has great bagels, another good option. But lots of different retail locations, Subway, Panda Express, right in the Viking Union, Starbucks, multiple Starbucks locations across campus. So a lot of different variety and choices for your student. Okay, so to wrap us up here, we're going to talk about next steps and really talk about what fall welcome will look like for your student. So a couple of things before your student gets to campus or before your student moves in, you want to set up a communication plan with them. So your interaction might look different. Maybe you want to check in once a week or twice a month, or maybe it's daily, or your student wants to maybe check in daily or less often. You want to start having those conversations now to set that up, especially if you're out of state or not local to the Bellingham area. That's really important to be talking about, and you can change that along the way in terms of what works for you. Doing your research, really, there's a ton of resources, programs, events, clubs, ways to get involved. There's so much that campus offers. So we highly encourage you to look at Western's website and really think about, for your student, ways to get connected, involved. One of the key reasons that we found that students leave Western or any higher education institution their first year is that they don't feel like they belong or they have that connection to the institution. So one thing Richard and I really push in our work and our university residences is getting connected to a club, an organization, meeting people. There's a lot of programs, events, opportunities. Those first few weeks of classes and during move-in is such a crucial time for your student to find their people, find their connections, find their place on campus. So I encourage you to look at our website and see those different options that are available to students. You want to contact different offices. So we just talked about dining. If you have questions about dining, now is a great time to reach out. If your student goes to counseling on a regular basis, you can reach out to our counseling center, and your student can reach out to the counseling center and set up those appointments and ways to do that now. So be thinking about resources and offices that you may want to connect with before move-in day, and have your student visit those offices, or at least contact them when they first get to campus. You really want to visualize move-in day. We see a lot of excitement and a lot of happy moments on move-in day. We also see a lot of tears, specifically usually from parents and families who are dropping off their students, especially those for the first time. So we encourage you to visualize what that day looks like. We know that's a special day for a lot of our students and families, and really think about what you want to share with your student as they go off to college. It's also a very important day for them, probably one they'll remember for the rest of their life. So really think about the messages you want to convey, the advice you want to give, the support that you want to share with them, your pride in them as a student and going off to college. So be thinking about those things. So when move-in day comes, you feel like you can express that before or after that experience. Ask for help. So we know that going to college for your student can be overwhelming and exciting time, but there's a lot of information to consume. So we encourage you to reach out to us, reach out to our housing office. A lot of times housing is the first place that students go because housing is important, but we can also connect you to other offices on campus, academic resources. And encourage you to enjoy your time with your student this summer. Really relish that time. Have that quality time with them before they leave for Western in the fall, and really reflect on this new experience and what this new adventure brings ahead. So that move-in day, so again, that's our website, housing.wwu.edu, has a ton of information about the actual move-in day, when students can move in, what to bring, what not to bring, what that transition will look like. We talked about getting involved, getting connected. So encourage you to, again, look at those clubs, organizations. We have a lot of things in the residence halls that students can get involved in. Hall Council is one of those. It's basically a student government organization for the residence hall that they live in. They do programs, events. They talk about the needs of the community members who are there, and really work with the resident director in that building to get new things for the building and advocate for what they're really wanting to see in their residence hall experience. And again, ask for help. So we just want to reiterate that we're here. We have some laws, if you've heard of FERPA laws, that restrict us in sharing specific information around academics, grades, financial concerns, things like that. But we can talk to you about what resources are available on campus. We can talk about what we usually do to help solve roommate situations, for example, or conduct concerns when students choose to drink alcohol or use drugs, for example, and process with you how we work through those situations. So if you have questions, we don't want you to feel like you're on your own. There's definitely people at Western, and especially our housing staff, who can help with those concerns. So again, you can contact us at housing.wwu.edu. Our email as well, housing@wwu.edu is our email. So any questions you have, feel free to reach out. Encourage you again, look at our website, and we're so excited to see you and your student on move-in day to welcome you to campus, and really hope that your student has the best experience possible at Western. But thanks so much for listening to our presentation today. And then again, reach out if you have questions. We'll be here all summer. and be ready to welcome you and your student in the fall. So thank you.